To order the Board of Supervisors regular meeting for Monday, August 1st. If everyone would stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. I've been asked during this moment of silence if we could all think about our Captain Brown, who passed on July 20th. He started working in Rappahannock County October 1984 as a patrol deputy and retired in 2008, if you'd keep him in your thoughts. Thank you. All right, we have an agenda in front of us.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Additions or deletions?
No, sir. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. At this time, we have the presentation, school report, of Dr. Grimsley, who is looking very tan.
Thank you. Might be because I just returned from the beach. As I was saying before, first time ever I've shut off email notifications. I really highly recommend doing that once in a while. Haven't done that before. Good afternoon from your Panther family. We are gearing up to start another school year in just a little over a week. Much has been done in preparation for the return of staff and students, and we are optimistic that this school year will be the best year ever as we embark on the road to remarkable. Just this morning, we welcomed 20 new teachers and staff to Rappahannock County Schools. New teachers are undergoing a 2-day orientation to acclimate them to RCPS, as well as provide essential training to begin the year. They will also spend time meeting with their mentors, who will delve deeper into key concepts, as well as be a support system for our new teachers and staff. At the end of last school year, we were a bit concerned with the high number of vacancies that we would not be able to recruit the staff necessary to start the year off successfully. However, I am so pleased to say that as of last month, we are one of the very few school districts in the whole Commonwealth who are fully staffed to provide high-quality instruction during a major nationwide teacher shortage. This is truly a testament to the work that we are all doing collaboratively to create an innovative, welcoming, and successful school community. Thank you so much for your key involvement in this process. All teachers and staff returned this Wednesday for convocation at RCHS at 9 a.m. We have a very busy back-to-school schedule with essential staff development, much of it focused on mental health and school safety. These will be key themes as we work through this year to continue to address COVID-19 fallout and after effects in the education landscape. While we are dealing with significant challenges presented by 2.5 years of dealing with a global pandemic, I am so thrilled to report that our preliminary SOL test results and other academic indicators show that our students have made huge progress this past year, far exceeding expectations from the state level, so much so that we predict we will likely be at pre-pandemic student outcome levels by the end of this school year, which is pretty unparalleled compared to what they're predicting. Much of this must be attributed to our ability to keep schools open for as many students as possible, even at the height of the pandemic. So thank you all so much for your unwavering support in making this happen last year. Meet the Teacher Night is Monday, a week from today, from 1 to 4 and 5 to 7. Please feel free to stop in and say hello to our teachers and see some of the amazing updates to our facilities. I know you'll be pleased. Also, backed by popular demand is our monthly calendar of events. We encourage you to make appearances and come support our CPS. And as always, thank you so much for your continuous support of the school system. We would not be nearly as successful as we are without that support. Do you have any questions for me? All right.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Hope it's a great year. Next, we have employee recognition.
Absolutely.
Quite a few.
I'm going to provide these to the chair in order of years served and then alphabetical. And so first is Miss May, who's been with us for 5 years, which is obviously very close to my heart, having worked hand in hand with her, and just lost her to retirement. And so presented are both your letter from your last meeting regarding your retirement payment.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. Please come visit. Pictures everywhere.
Fight for camera.
Here we go.
Next with, again, 5 years, dispatcher Vicki Miller. I've had, having worked on the radio system, I've had the pleasure of interfacing with dispatcher Miller, both in the office and on the radio. She's a fantastic support addition to the sheriff's office. And again, 5 years, Caitlin Struckman in the clerk's office, who is, I guess, as I hear, responsible for the fact that we're being videotaped right now. Before she started with the clerk's office, so everybody out there should be very grateful for Caitlin and the work she does in the clerk's office. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Caitlin.
I don't even know if this individual knows that they're up for 10 years, Mr. Goff.
10 years.
You get a new pin for your lapel.
10 years. I thought I'd been at this for about 27. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Art.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Kim McKiernan has also been with us for 10 years. Kim is away at training today to the registrar's office.
All right.
Next, Deputy Fincham, 15 years. I don't know how you can stay doing that, the same thing for 15 years. I'll figure it out someday, hopefully. But thank you, Deputy
Very glad
Fincham.
that you do.
Thanks for all you do at the schools. And Denise Krasinski, I don't see with us, with the library for 20 years. Oh, wow. Yeah, and she's about to retire. And then lastly, 25 years. Mark Currens, Sheriff's Office. Interesting, we have both our school resource officers with us today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, next under presentations, we have the Family Futures Program with an annual update, I believe. Mr. Massey.
Roger Jenkins is on the list.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
You good?
Okay.
Thank you so much. Tom Massey's my name. For those who don't know me, I'm proud certainly to be here to represent Family Futures. For those who don't know what Family Futures is, I'll run you through a little quick synopsis. This is our second time we've been invited to speak, which I much appreciate. We are a group here located in the county that is working with the public schools, and we provide savings accounts for every kindergarten kid that starts in our school. And the biggest part of that is financial education. And we are proud this year to welcome our 4th class of students. And basically the way this works, we put $100 into a savings account, non-taxpayer money, just through the generosity of others. And that money sits there. If the kid does nothing, that's what they've got. If the kid demonstrates increasing financial literacy through various metrics we put within the curriculum, and as we move further into other grades, it's going to become a little tougher, obviously. They have the opportunity to earn another $100 in that year. And I'm really proud to say that if you do the math on us, we've put about $17,000, $18,000 into kids' pockets as a gift. The reality is they've got in savings a little over $52,000, which I find really fascinating, particularly coming through a COVID year and COVID years. And the best part that's happening now is kind of the natural maturation of this process. We have an embedded person within the school that does the financial education for the kindergarten, first and second grade kids and kind of gets the program rolling. But as we move into third grade, it's going to be harder for that one person to visit those classrooms twice a month or whatever they have to do. So we have on our board a lot of very seasoned educators that have worked in partnership, meeting, thanks to Dr. Grimsley and their teachers, met together through the summer, through the winter, as developing curriculum that suits them. And for us, we're not developing curriculum. Those are words that I can say because my mother taught for 40 years. I understand how to say the word. I don't know what they really mean. But the crew that we have is very bright, and they're working hand in hand, largely to serve as a resource to help the teachers implement that curriculum and meet some of the standards they already have to meet as far as the state's concerned, but then take it a step further and make the program their own. And so this fall, when we start the third grade class, it's really going to be that group's been meeting now for 6, 7 months. And when they hit the fall, everybody's pretty excited about what's going to roll for those kids. And what I think is going to be pretty exponential growth in their financial literacy at what's at the third grade level. So I have a photo that a parent sent us, the first kid to ever earn all of his incentives. And he earned all his incentives that day because he knew if he got his money in sooner, he'd have more money at the end. Because we've got these kids, they're today earning 4% on the first $1,000. So he knew if he got all his money in quicker, he'd have more interest. And they get quarterly bank statements. And in my travels, I run across a lot of parents whose kids are in this program. And some of them don't know, they know who I am, but they don't know I'm affiliated with the program. And I've had a few badmouth the program because they can't eat dinner on time because they have to look at their bank statements. The older brother will not leave the little brother alone when he's trying to buy candy. So I'm kind of liking it, but one lady, she used some choice words to describe the program. So I don't know if those people know what those kids are learning, but they're learning stuff. I said, yes, ma'am, I understand they are. That's good to hear. So, but I'll share a little picture that she sent us, nothing too critical, but it's a kid looking at his future in lots of ways. And modeling a shirt that we put together we had an ice cream social this spring, which I was credited with whipping a group of kids into a frenzy and making them completely unable to be taught. But it's an ice cream social. What do you want? But they got a cool T-shirt. So this kid's modeling his shirt. But thank you all so much for your time and support. And anybody has a question, I'd love to entertain. We've got with us our executive director, one of our board members, Rosa Crocker, as well. And if I don't know the answer, I'll stand back to you.
I think it's an amazing program. Thank you for coming again and speaking with us. How many kids are in it?
We have, this year, it'd be 190.
We have 190, and how many is it?
So it's unique in that,
250 this year.
we're all done.
Wow.
It's quite unique in that, well, we're certainly the only one in the Commonwealth of anything resembling it. And so we're the youngest and we're the smallest. But it's so unique because in this county, we can take the entire school district instead of one school. So I really believe that if there's a difference can be made in these children as they become adults or in their families, having children that are getting exposed to this, we ought to be able to see it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I believe wholeheartedly. So I'm anxious to see as we get further in this program and our assessment tools can come out and Dr. Grimsley can help us with those. We'll have an idea for sure what we're teaching the kids and how much they're taking home and how much does it change their life.
And is the vision K through 12?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't finish that. Every year they can earn $100. So when they graduate, $1,500 will be theirs. It's a custodial account that we hold the backside of. Their parents can't touch it. They can't touch it until they successfully graduate and have a plan for which to use the money. And it doesn't have to be necessarily, a four-year institution. It could be most anything that is of use to help them further their life. It could be licensure. It could be further education. It could be maybe I want to save in an IRA. Maybe it's whatever I want to do. So the idea is those kids will come to us with a plan on how to appropriately use that money. And then we're looking really forward to giving that first check away. It's going to be a while, but
It's going to work in the meantime.
It's going to be a ton of fun when it happens. And it's not I think the education will certainly be much more valuable than the dollars they receive, but the dollars will be nice too.
Thank you.
So this education is it's on top of what the typical student would have going in through K through 12. Your surrounding schools aren't teaching this. Is there an example of a task or a class that they would have gone through to earn additional dollars? that you wouldn't see in a neighboring county? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, I'll take a stab at it. Dr. Grimsley can probably tell you more, because she knows a lot more about the scope and sequence of things. For that? Teachers. That side of the kitchen table teachers a lot. I got it. So, that's right. So, but there's, from a lot, the little bitty kids are learning money chain strand stuff. So what a quarter looks like, how many quarters in a dollar. As they get older, one teacher developed these big, maybe one of our, the big die that they roll that has the coins on it, and they roll them, and then the kids have to add up how much money that is, and whoever the first to add. So they learn to count. That's first, second grade. And then, I think the real great thing that's happening that the teachers seem to be driving on, maybe for the same, is this idea of cross-curricular education of math and finance. So teaching math by teaching social studies, teaching math while teaching history, and realizing how money plays into societies, it plays into the roles of pretty much everywhere you go. So you can certainly add to that if you like. So.
No problem. So, and part of that too is not just,
Yep.
part of what we're teaching also with the financial literacy is the real world application, and that it carries on through other aspects of life. So instead of just learning the coins, which most schools will teach you that, I hope, because that's the state curriculum, then there's an application process on using that in the classroom store and earning additional incentives to earn more, and then seeing the rewards from that if you're saving your money and then using it in a classroom store or a reality store simulation like a market day scenario. So really getting the students to understand that. But then also the neat part is trying to hook in the families as well with understanding that future planning, if it starts at that age, your child can do whatever they want to do, especially if you're really involved in that process so early, because we had learned so much from juniors applying to certain things. There were a lot of families that said, we didn't think about this, we didn't plan for it, you're just going to work wherever, and college isn't in the chips for us. So this is a whole other piece of involving those families in those, and Family Futures has been great, offering family workshops and how to build a 529 and looking at colleges and connecting with our POG team, because Jenny Capsa, who's also doing some of the family financial education, also is the POG coordinator. So it all dovetails into that same mission. So it's been great to see.
Thank you.
Thank you for partnering, I say that very loosely, with the county on preparing an application for the VACO Achievement Awards. We look very forward and fortunate to a good response. I'm not sure when that's going to be released, but we're hopeful that your hard work will be recognized statewide, and then other localities can benefit from all that you've put together.
Our hope as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the quarterly VDOT report, the update. Mr. Nesbitt? Thank you again.
You notice Fincham and Currents wear their bulletproof jackets here. I don't know what they're expecting.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Donahue and board members. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. We're it's now August. We're right in the middle of all our summertime activities, mowing. We never stop grading gravel roads, patching, cutting back areas for site distance, drainage, trying to respond to the citizens' complaints as much as we can. We are getting ready to start, probably in the next week or two, we're going to mobilize to Kaiser Run Road and then start a rural rustic project there. It's the first phase of a two-phase project, and it's a short section, but we'll get in and get out hopefully within in and out in a month. So you'll see some activity there in the next couple of weeks. We just finished a telefeed project, one of our first ones in a long time, where we constructed a turn lane at Route 211 and 639, and that is complete and open to traffic. And we'll be working with Mr. Curry to try to identify other projects in the future, along with our safety and operational projects. And hopefully next time I come, we'll have another project we can identify to plan and construct. Well, I believe we're finished up with our paving program for the summer. We resurfaced two roads, Main Street in Sperryville and Weaver Road in Amosville. And those are complete, and I think there were 4 surface treatment projects that we had in our program. So we had a successful year. We had a little paving, had delays in the paving schedule, but they finally got their act together and got it done. I think it was a nice job. Anyway, we'll start gearing up for another program next year. As far as there's really no significant traffic engineering studies underway right now. We did get a request to put a no outlet sign on Riley Hollow Road, which is a fairly easy fix. And like I said, we're working on all our maintenance activities are still ongoing. We do get the occasional summer storm where we have down trees and debris that we have to remove. And we had one pretty significant one back in June that hit Fauquier County more so than Rappahannock County, but it still impacted us a little bit. But we're, that's what we do. We respond to those and take care of them. Right now, we only have like 10 or 12 outstanding work orders, so we're in good shape there. We are, a lot of emphasis recently has come up on the pedestrian study that was done for Sperryville and Flint Hill area. Of course, we reviewed the draft study, and I know you have a public hearing planned for that tonight, and we'll be glad to work with the county as moving forward on any projects that may come out of that study. As you know, it is a planning study. A lot more detailed work would need to be done if we want to move forward with any of those projects, but certainly the need is there, and we'll be glad to work with the county to help move those projects forward, when and if you choose to do so. That's pretty much my report. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Yes, sir.
Mark, I see just riding around the roads, quite a few of them in Jackson District. You've got red flagging on some trees. You know about that?
If there are we have, unless it's a road project on here like Kaiser Run Road or Horton Hollow Road, it's a project that's imminent. It shouldn't be us.
It could be ash trees. Are they?
No, the one is a huge oak tree, but it's real close to the road.
Yeah, but if they're dead trees, it could be our tree folks that are getting them marked for future removal.
I took it with VDOT. I have
Yeah.
no idea that it's actually correct. I just assumed it, which is kind of dangerous at times.
Yeah, like I said, we've got a long list and we keep hacking away at it.
Well, I appreciate it. Anything you can do. I know that they've been working on getting them up as soon as they fall down, but there's quite a few of them close to the road that over time became a problem. They have become a problem.
Right. Well, like I said, we get them on our list. We have a district tree vegetation manager who is a certified arborist, and he's the one that manages all our tree removal contracts. If we can't handle it with our area headquarters, he does it, and he prioritizes them based on risk, and you just have to work through the list.
So if there are specific trees, shoot me an address range or something, and then I can coordinate with Mark and you can get people out there to look at specifically a particular tree. They've done that in a number of cases. I think one of them, Viewtown, for you at one point in time.
They came right out, I believe, on Viewtown there and did some flagging.
Yeah.
So right now I don't know what the status of those trees are.
Okay. Well, I will.
I mean, they may be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't check on that before I came, but I certainly can follow up on that.
And then I'd sent you just those couple of painting spots that I noticed. And there was a crew painting in Sperryville today. I was almost late to the meeting because there was a crew out painting, and it looks great. The village looks really wonderful too, where the milling was done and the new pavement put down and the painting. It looks wonderful. Thank you so much for having folks do that. And then I know we had talked at a recent meeting, I think right after the beginning of the year, about Hull School Road and that road needing some attention toward the end of it. And it backs up to the park, so it tends to get pretty rough. So that's one I just wanted to mention again. And And then the other thing that I kind of have on the checklist that was something we voted on last November is the placement of the speed display signs for Flint Hill and Sperryville, and I was just wondering where we stood on that.
Well, we have a portable, so you're talking about the portable sign that we
So
install?
the fixed signs, every month we have a coordination meeting, myself, Mr. Nesbitt, and a number of people. And towards the end of that meeting is when I say that we also have these speed display signs that are on the list, and you're waiting for me on that. And so that's held up by me. They are referenced in the document that you will review tonight, and I guess depending on how some of those projects go, if there's any interest in working towards them, it could shift where the appropriate location of those signs might be. But again, those projects are probably long-term, so it's an active project on our.
Well, I mean, I would just
queue list.
say that, to me, that was a vote of the full board last November, and I think action should be taken on those for installation sooner rather than later. That's a do no harm sort of approach, in my opinion, and should be one of the first things we do. It's certainly one of the easiest things that we can do to help alleviate speeding and draw people's attention to safety matters in the villages. So I don't know if we need to put a deadline on this, but I think that they should be up by October.
They aren't necessarily allowed. And there's a engineering memorandum that discusses which criteria you have to meet in order to put one up. And so we can't just put them up. We have to apply to VDOT, meet their requirements. And so my plan is to try to coordinate with VDOT in advance of any application so we don't run into a roadblock with an application.
Right. And this is where we were in November when we voted to move forward to do it. That was what we empowered you to do, was to reach out to VDOT and work out places that would fit their criteria and work for the surrounding area and get those signs in place. And I just think a year is too long. I think this should have happened relatively quickly, and I think we need to get moving on it because clearly there is a need for increased safety around the villages, and this is one of the best approaches. We see other localities using it consistently with good results. You yourself have said, Mr. Nesbitt, that I think you said it lowers speeds on average 10 miles an hour.
I think it's more like 5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And it varies, but it does have some impact.
So, I mean, in terms of a relatively passive way we can get folks to hit the brakes, I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it, but I think this should be a priority for our staff.
I thought it was.
How much trouble is it to move them if this study determines that they need to be moved to a different location?
Well, we're talking about permanent installations, and
Concrete foundation.
yeah,
Build a new concrete foundation.
I think it's probably, you'd probably be surprised, I think there's a cost to install, purchase and install a new one, and the cost to remove one, depending on who does it, if you hire a contractor to do it, could be, more, it'd be probably more than you think it would be, but.
Would it be possible in the interim to do a trailer with a speed, sort of sign on it?
Well, we have done those in the past, and I have seen those in other localities too. And I've seen temporary ones in other localities too, and we've been told that we can't do that. For whatever reason, we've been told that we can't do that.
We wouldn't be able to, if we had one, for instance, that we wanted to use in one location, then we could use it for events or whatever.
There are other localities that have small portable units that they use, and that they go from site to site. And I think Culpeper has done that. So I think you can check with the Culpeper folks and see how that works. As long as it's, in my opinion, as long as it's not interfering with traffic or creating a problem. If the locality wants to undertake something like that,
Do you know if the statistics are there, if they do the same thing effectually as the ones that are permanent? Will they slow traffic down?
well, the thing about the portable ones is you do have the ability to move them around in different locations, and I think you may get a bigger bang for your buck that way. But if you have a problem area, like coming into a lower speed, and I think the town of Warrenton has them, the Plains just installed a couple, last couple of years. You can certainly check with them. I don't have the data, I don't have the data to see how they, how the folks are reacting to those, but, like I said, I'm willing to work with the locality to try to help get
Thanks.
these things in.
I mean, I feel we should really get moving on these. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
My only concern is having to move them and the cost to move them. If we can do something temporarily until this study's done, or until, well, tonight we should know if we're moving forward on any of the information we received.
They're solar powered, so all you'd really have would be the cost of a small concrete foundation.
Right. You have the cost to install, and like I said, these days, it's like anything else, the costs are, it could be, several $1,000s to install one, purchase and install one.
And Culpeper County has some that I've seen that are about the size of the stop sign that they're mounted under, and they move them all around the county. I see them a lot of times in the school zones. They'll use them to slow people down.
Those are probably battery powered.
Yeah,
that are
and they
meant
still need to
move from
meet
place to place.
certain criteria, but like I said, those are, we try not to, get into what they can and can't do with those
Okay.
too much. If they're willing to take on the effort to try to do that, to me, it's a benefit.
Thank you, Mark.
The one question I have, and I know it's outside of Rappahannock, but the bridge on Crest Hill Road, 647, that's in Fauquier, that's under construction,
Yes.
is that still a November ETA on completion?
It should be complete a little bit prior to that. They are making, good progress, but I haven't received anything that gives me a date or a time frame, but it should be completed by the completion date.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I know that you don't think about it until you go to Google and it tells you to go left and you're wondering why.
And I do plan on getting our portable large trailer speed trailer back up on 211 sometime this fall.
That would be great.
And I'll try to get over to Flint Hill at some point too.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, it is time for public comment. Anybody wishing to speak, if you'll please be recognized, and when you come up, give us your name and your district. Make sure the mic's a good height for you so that the people on Zoom can hear you. That would be very much appreciated. Yes, ma'am.
Just my height. Anita Ramos, Hampton District. Just wanted to say that some days you have really wonderful, difficult jobs to do. And today you have 2 applications for Library Board of Trustees. And I don't know these people, but I read their applications. They're both terrific. And you're going to have a hard time making a decision. But I'm very pleased that the Board of Trustees, that's a hefty word, trustees, that you're going to have somebody terrific to take that place. So anyway, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the courtroom? Yes, sir.
Hello, Don Locke, Jackson District. I wanted to come today just to speak a little bit about the boundary line adjustment. I've been scratching my head a little bit about sort of watching how everything's been going, and I think it took me a while to try to figure out, I guess, what was bothering me about it, but I finally came to the conclusion that I feel like maybe that the board has a different. That the question before you is somewhat different than what you think it is. I guess when I look at the boundary line adjustment, I'm looking at it as, is this adjustment, is this going to benefit the people in the county? Are there any health issues that will be affected by this? Are there any safety concerns? Is this fiscally responsible to do this? And for all those questions, I feel like it is a positive to the county. I feel that it is concentrating growth where there's existing water and sewer as per the county comprehensive plan. I understand that it's expanding the town boundary. When it's doing that, it's hitting upon a 211, which is a pretty hard boundary as far as whether this would lead to further expansion of the town. I think it's a fairly safe thing from that standpoint. I look at whether it may be providing housing in the county, which I do think is needed, and I think it does. In fact, I think it provides the opportunity for affordable housing, which is definitely needed, as in if we're concentrating growth in the town, I think it should be not just for people who have $750,000 cash in the bank that they can purchase a property, but somebody who can actually move to the county, maybe move into town that actually, maybe one of our seniors that has less income stream, or younger people that maybe we could see some kids in the town again. I think that right now, I was looking for an analogy to try to figure out how the negotiation is going so far, and the only thing I really came up with was it's sort of like asking your spouse asking you to take the trash on the way to work, and you saying, "That's great, but only if you do the wash every Friday and do all the laundry and stop snoring and yada yada yada." And it seems like all these things are sort of like this idea that there's this business transaction is what I've heard it called, but I don't really see like this is a way to have a relationship. I know that the town is sometimes very problematic to work with. I've worked with the town. I know that it can be very problematic to work with. But the idea of like putting in this decision everything, all the sort of issues that have come up in the past, the present, and what you think in the future may annoy you, and saying all those things need to be part of this idea of whether or not the boundary line adjustment goes forward, to me just seems like a weird way to have a relationship going forward, because you're going to have a relationship with the town no matter what. Once again, just to kick back to what I said before, is this in the county's best interest? Well, I think that it is. I had heard from one person this will really show the people who are against the boundary line adjustment that we got a good deal. But I just don't really see that that's going to appease really anybody. I think what's going to end up happening is, if we keep on pushing at this, is that the town is just going to decide that they don't want to go forward. We don't want to go forward, and it's not going to happen. And I think that would be a huge loss for the county, because I think that it is a positive thing for us to do. So for what it's worth, like I said, I just, I hope that we can come to the conclusion that, one, let's decide on whether this is good for the county, and two, if we're going to make recommendations to the town or anybody else as far as the boundary line adjustment, what's needed. Let's look at, are there safety impacts? Are there road impacts that need to be addressed? I feel like that's a valid concern. How's traffic? That's a valid concern. Is this going to adversely impact the schools? Well, actually, I think it'll probably help our schools if we get some kids in there, because we're not at capacity. So we'll actually get some income there. But, but thinking about, is this impacting our citizens? And if it's something that's not really if it doesn't really seem like it's really relevant to the proposal, then I just don't know why it's in the negotiation. And when I looked at that long list, I think there's some of that that's relevant, but I feel like there's a lot of that's not relevant. And so anyway, I don't know. For what it's worth, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody else in the courtroom? Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to speak? If so, please raise your Zoom hand to be recognized. Not seeing any Zoom hands raised. I'm going to close public comment. Thank you. All right, moving into the consent agenda. Entertain a motion unless,
Motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented, if there's no changes.
thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. All right. Appointments. We have some.
First on the list of appointments is the vacancy on the Agricultural and Forestal Districts Advisory Committee. You continue to have one vacancy on that committee. And the prerequisite is that the applicant needs to be a landowner, and we have no applications.
All right.
And if the past experience would predict future, a board member is probably going to have to reach out and handpick somebody and suggest that they submit an application for this one.
Rappahannock County Recreational Facilities Authority.
Yeah, so it looks like we got an application in from Mr. George Gardner in Hampton. And read through his resume, and he looks like he'd be a great fit. And look forward to welcoming another, hopefully, board member. So with that, I would like to make a motion to adopt the resolution to appoint George Gardner to the Rec Authority, the RCRFA. Excuse me.
Motion, do I have a second?
It's like a very well-qualified candidate, so I would second that motion.
Great. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
So roll call with the
Oh, sorry
resolution,
about that.
please.
Roll call. Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Carney.
Aye.
And I also. And for some reason-
Madam Chair,
Frozen.
members of the board, this next appointment, I don't know either one of the two applicants personally, but we did have an individual that had to resign that resided in Jackson District, and currently there are no other members on the library board from Jackson District, and the desire to keep the board looking somewhat balanced in nature, I think that we should lean heavily toward the Jackson District applicant. That's the only
Johnston is
real
here.
reason that-
If the board wants to hear from her, she is here. I don't know
And I think we agreed
Ms.
that,
McDonald.
in the last meeting that we would allow applicants to speak. So if you'd like to come up.
I welcome this opportunity to say how much I would really like to serve on the library board. I've attended some of their meetings. I've talked with people about some of the issues, including Mr. Frazier. I called him as soon as I decided that I wanted to apply. And I think Gary's had the application for a couple of weeks. My life has been so full, thankfully, that sometimes I forget to really point out why I should be on a board like this. Especially one with such fiscal responsibility and a great need and service to this community. I belong to 3 libraries. By far, Rappahannock is my favorite. One of the reasons is that it has a regional affiliation. And so if I want something through interlibrary loan, all I have to do is ask. That doesn't happen in Culpeper, and that does not happen in Madison. So I just wanted to say that. But I have served on some significant boards before. Perhaps I should mention that I was the president of the Women's National Book Association, DC chapter. That meant that I was presiding over the board. I was the president of the Madison Literacy Council for several years, And that meant I presided over the board and, in fact, coordinated our all-Madison, all-county read of one book, from little kids to seniors. And it was a book about the Hoover School up in Double Top, near the Double Top. And people who were reading that book, seniors who were reading that book, some of them had attended that school before it closed down. And it meant a great deal for them to have that. Anyway, that was one of my favorite things that I ever did. I'm also, I was on the board of directors for the Madison Lions Club, and I am now on the board of directors for the Rappahannock Lions Club. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about my background or my desire to help in this way. I think that I can. I have I've had staffs, I've had budgets, I've had to produce in my life as a professional, and I did a good job.
Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate that you
Thank you.
have applied.
Thank you.
How many openings do we have?
There's one opening.
One.
This is for the remaining term.
This is
correct?
for the remaining term, so it's actually through December 31, 2024, at which point in time the person could be reappointed.
Any other comments or thoughts?
I would put forth the name of Ms. Kathleen Johnson for appointment to the remaining term on the library board.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I would just ask that we add the language we discussed last time regarding waiving formalities in regards to the application. I do think we need to include that.
Yeah, I did include that in the recommended action. I think that's prudent.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is this a roll
Is
call?
that accepted by Mr. Frazier and Mr. Carney to just tag on to the end to waive any informalities?
Yeah, yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Sorry, is this roll call
It's
again?
not dated.
No.
But it's not dated?
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, my iPad has frozen, so
Oh.
going into old business?
Yes.
Do you want my iPad?
I'm going to reboot. Well, thanks.
The first item in old business is just revisiting the water resources protection and monitoring. There's been no action on this from your last meeting. Mr. White with the state will reach out to me when he has more information on the easement process. I have not heard from him on that. To put the climate response well near the county's radio tower.
You think that's just a hang-up with the state, or?
I think it's state
Okay.
has a list probably as well.
All right, volunteer fire and rescue insurance update.
Great. Mr. Polster's here, and I've attached to this agenda item a memo from Mr. Polster to me summarizing where we are on the insurance, and I think I shared with the board, but I wanted the public to be aware as well. Over the last year, the county staff and volunteers with the Fire and Rescue Association, different companies have worked together to transition administrative control of the insurance for the volunteers and their apparatus and buildings and their accident sickness over to the county. The county has worked with them since you've met with, I guess, the executive committee of the association to discuss this. And as of the 19th of July, all of those policies are now switched over. Workers' comp is switched over on July 1 to VACORP. And then on July 19th, the remaining policies with VFIS have switched over directly to VFIS without a broker in the middle at this point in time. That shouldn't be a cost difference necessarily, but we thought it was more of a neutral switch, moving from the prior broker to VFIS directly, and we may move to a broker in the future who can provide some value-added services. During that process, we identified there were several benefit levels and claim coverage levels that we're substandard compared to our peers in the surrounding area. And Mr. Polster worked with the representatives from the volunteer companies to increase those limits and level them out across all the different companies. And so that's very good news. And in addition to improving coverage, we've saved $41,000 on what was requested for budgeting for FY23. Those dollars in the fire service fund can be reallocated at some point in time at the board's discretion. I would recommend at some point in time that we sweep them from the insurance line to the contingency line so that they're sitting there waiting for board direction on how to use them. Other than that, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer. Otherwise, Mr. Polster's here and could answer.
I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to make a comment of thanks to the chiefs, the different companies, the association, and also the working group that met several times over the course of winter and spring on the insurance coverage question and put in a lot of time to cover this topic and work together to provide a good service and save some money. So it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along, Town of Washington Footpath.
Yes, board will recall a few meetings ago in June, the board provided direction to staff to go back to the town and let them know that a perpetual easement was not something the board was interested in, but a license that offered greater flexibility to the, both parties really, but to the county, provided necessary protections for liability, and then allowed the county to direct that the path be moved if there were conflicts with future capital projects. That back and forth work has happened, and the county received a draft from Mr. Krim, who is working with the mayor and perhaps others, on a license that, which is attached. There is one additional small change that we discussed with the easement that didn't make it into this draft, and that was due to a conversation that Mr. Goff had with Mr. Luke about maybe there was a historical license for a path way back in time, that if you move forward with a new license, there should be a statement that says any prior license or written permission for a path should be hereby revoked, just to make clear that we have one license and this is it, as opposed to whatever conflicting terms might be in some historical document. Other than that, the mayor, myself, and Mr. Goff could probably answer any questions you might have. There is a graphic that the mayor does provide options on how we get around the maintenance building, and whether we go in front of or behind. The path that I showed you at your last meetings was the dashed path. There is an option to go in front, so it's really optional if the board has a preference. That can be conveyed. If the board has no preference, then perhaps what the trail constructor thinks is best would be most appropriate.
Like it's meandering around the tractors.
Oops, sorry. Yep. There, I've opened it twice.
Meandering around, sorry, Mr. Frazier, I didn't.
Yeah, the front of the, there's a couple doors here and there's some doors over here. And so I think there's some flexibility to wrap it in different ways. The wording in the document is fairly flexible regarding the route, and that it's as defined in the field, and then is very flexible for the county to redirect that route in the future on pretty short notice. So don't have a lot of concern with conflicts like that. They might be best worked out in the field with equipment. I don't think the solid line in front would work very well because there's the dumpster, the truck goes through there, and the dash line would probably be better, which is what I showed you last time, which aligns with that.
It's just could become problematic. You're now creating a situation where people are supposed to use an area to walk through that normally we don't see anybody there. So you're gonna be encouraging people to be in an area that normally doesn't have any people in it.
Yes, absolutely, with a footpath.
And this is mulching and that kind, it's not anything that's permanent, right?
The document, well, nothing's permanent. The document originally came over in draft with paving, stones, mulch, and I said, I'm pretty confident the board has no interest in paving, and that was taken out. So now it does not carry that language.
And the overall goal primarily is to be able to walk to the post office safely off the road.
That's both for county staff during their day-to-day job as well as the citizens and those who are in the town.
You know, a lot of this will be carried by the work around the new courthouse. A lot of it will be carried by that.
Right.
And I worry about this. I mean, this is not anything I haven't said before. I worry about this impeding progress. I worry about people being in parts of this complex that they wouldn't ordinarily be. I know things go missing from the maintenance shed routinely, or from different places on the grounds routinely. And it's not a statement, you know, against anyone. That's just the way things are. Sometimes when you open up parts of a working complex in ways that wouldn't normally be open to the public, it's not an ideal situation. And I've even said before in building committee meetings that I think that maintenance shed should be county personnel only. So I voted against this path the first time, and I continue to have a lot of concerns that I know can be addressed long-term, but short-term, I think this may create a bigger problem than it solves.
We have the ability to revisit this at any time, and this license allows us to shut it down at any point, right?
Yeah, I pulled up the last paragraph. County may terminate this license or require the town to modify the location of the trail at any time upon 30 days' notice. Town may terminate the license by notice to the county.
Yeah.
Upon termination, the county may, but is not obligated to remove, block, modify, or maintain the trail.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I think getting people moving is a great thing. I think going around the backside is probably better. But I think that this achieves what was the concern in the last meeting, at least to Ms. Smith's point about impeding further, or at least when we start working on the courthouse, this solves that. We're flexible.
Right.
And it's a mulch path. I mean, a mulch path can be gotten rid of.
Yep.
They can move it. So I think this is a great idea. I think being able to walk from Gay Street down to the post office is a good thing.
And I think, Mayor Catlin, feel free to come up and speak if you feel it will help in this conversation. I believe your study that was just done was for sidewalks, to be able to walk to the post office.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. We have that study is in the final stages of being done, much as I presume the one for Flint Hill and Sperryville is being done. One of the things that we've talked about is having a sidewalk to go down Warren Avenue. That will be an eventual and safest way to go. But unfortunately, with the way that the Department of Transportation works, it's going to take some time before that can be built. And I'm worried for the short term for residents both in the town and the county to be able to get there. This trail idea was done. We are not looking at doing the crushed stone. We're just looking at the mulch alternative on it. And we really, the whole idea is to try to be as amenable as possible. We do not want to try to hamper in any way the county work towards their courthouse. So if you need to change things once you start digging ground, then that we perfectly understand. But what we're going to do, I don't know how long it will be until you break ground, but we just need something as soon as we can to help people make that.
Thank you. Any questions for the mayor? All right, thank you very much. I too believe getting people walking is a good thing. And it looks like this can be changed at 30 days' notice. So I don't see it as really being a problem for the county, in my opinion. Mr. Frazier?
I have some of the same concerns that Ms. Smith has and just elaborated on that. We're now going to be, and I mentioned that, we're now going to be having people in places that they're not normally there, and we're encouraging them to be there with this. So at 10 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night, when a deputy sees somebody cut down through the building, you know, with gas at $5 a gallon, just, you know, now it's at $4 around here, but and diesel fuel's at over $5. All they gotta do is stash the can and say that they're taking a walk.
It is public property.
Yeah, but we're encouraging them to be there, and now they've got a reason to be there. They can, you know, normally they wouldn't have a reason to be there other than to flippantly answer back, it's public property. But they don't have a good reason to be there at 10 o'clock at night with a can in their hand. Now they will.
Yeah, I think a path might be a sufficient reason, but definitely not a necessary reason. And it is public property. So people are allowed to walk down there anyway.
But they're not encouraged to do it. You're encouraging people to be where they're not normally there now.
There is a road there, and I know that it doesn't go all the way, but I think if there's a concern about stuff in the county shed, genuinely, we should address that. I mean, nobody wants anything to walk off. And if we do have things walking off, then, I mean, if they're just sitting there and that's happening, that's a large oversight on our part. Like, we need to do something about it.
I don't know that we have a problem, but I certainly want to hear about it.
And in my mind, if we did do that and then things started walking off, then yeah, we would have to move and say, okay, this isn't working. But
It's not just so much walking off. I mean, anything could happen there.
what's that?
You could have anything happen there now that you're encouraging people to be there. Anything could happen there. We don't have too many assaults in the town that I'm aware of, but you could in a secluded area that you're encouraging people to be on, whereas they may be safer walking down the edge of the pavement. I don't know.
Mr. Goff noted that you could, if you were so inclined, to apply at open hours or closed hours for the trail so that deputies who saw somebody there would know whether they're allowed to be there or not allowed to be there.
Like a dusk to dawn thing?
Dusk to
dawn.
That would be much safer.
Do you-
What was your?
I was just going to make that point. I think that we would be happy at the town's expense as part of this trail to put up a sign that says closed from dusk to dawn. Something like that, at both ends.
That makes sense.
You're taking away quite a bit of the argument from me.
What do you need from us?
Well, we have this draft license in front of you. The town has asked for your consideration to move it forward. From this conversation today, as Mr. Goff noted, if you're inclined to take action, he would ask that you add the sentence that any previous license or written permission to construct a path on county property is hereby revoked into the earlier paragraph of the now therefore. And then I would suggest that if it's a condition of the license, that the path only be open from dusk to dawn to dusk, dawn to dusk, that also be included in the document so that it's very clear to everybody involved.
I think it should be.
I don't see any reason.
I don't know where the appropriate place for it would be.
I mean, you could just leave that to county attorney to insert at the most appropriate location.
Okay. So then, do we need a motion?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt or to
Authorize
To authorize
the chair to sign.
the chair to sign the path license for the Town of Washington path request with the addition of the language
Regarding past.
regarding past agreements being revoked and the addition of the language to include a dusk to dawn sign.
We have a motion. I'll second for discussion.
Could that motion be modified just slightly to the signage provided by the town at both ends of the pathway?
Yes. I amend my motion to
You amend,
include
I accept it.
adding signs at both sides.
Any further discussion? Other concerns?
I mean, I think I've voiced my concerns, and there's probably some personnel-related things that we can't discuss in open session, but I think it's an area we should approach with a lot of caution, and if the majority of the board feels differently, then that's the way it is.
No matter what, it appears that this is going to be a short-lived solution, depending on how quickly concrete and sidewalks and the county building occurs.
Well, the other part of the conversation is that, you know, we were moving forward in concert with something with the town, but yet we don't have the waivers that we sought for the courthouse for the Architectural Review Board from the town of Washington. And so that is really going to impede our progress as a building committee. And weird, you know, I continue to struggle that we seem to be portrayed as the bad guys, and yet here we are spending a lot of time and energy and trying to do, I think Mr. Fraser said, an act of good faith last time by sending down an agreement that had quite a bit of work into it. And now it's been rebuffed by the town soundly, from what I read in the paper. And here we are now working on a path which we could alleviate a lot of that issue for our staff and residents of the town by robust work on the courthouse. But with the additional, you know, wrinkle of working with the town and the ARB and the courthouse, that will certainly and invariably cause delays. And so, while I certainly respect my peers that want to continue to show good faith and cooperation, I do wonder, you know, when the reciprocity is going to start.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, sir. EMS provider coverage request.
Thank you. As noted in board docs, as you're aware, Sperryville Rescue Squad very effectively schedules their personnel at their station so that they can provide a crew 24/7. That is unique among our volunteer stations. Company 9 with the paid providers there does also obviously schedule. In reviewing their upcoming schedule, they've identified that they have predictable gaps in their coverage during August due to provider vacations and various other reasons, and have brought that to the attention of Mr. Polster and I, because quite frankly, they have great pride in being staffed 24/7. And they wanted to make sure we were aware and consider whether there are certain opportunities to provide additional care during that time. In my communication with Mr. Polster, I told him that it was my preference due to influences on other companies that if the board were to take action, it'd be my preference to do so with county staff. We have a model that was put in place for the chase vehicle to provide additional coverage, and that was requested by the association, passed through the Public Safety Committee and onto the board. And that if we can accommodate their needs anyway with that chase vehicle, whether staffed with one individual or two, that's my preference. And the next step of figuring out, are we going to transition in time to a point where the current status quo model is no longer adequate to provide care to our citizens? That really needs to go back through the same process that the Chase vehicle went through, which is the Association Public Safety Committee, and then to the board, so various options can be brought to you to consider how to invest the taxpayer dollars to provide the care that they need. In considering that, there are three options from a continuum of any number of options that I've prepared and placed in board docs that you can see, which is, one, just maintain status quo and hope another company has coverage between the Chase vehicle and Company 1 or Company 5. Hope that they can backfill when 7 is down. That's kind of what happens now, but we have some false sense of security because we know that 7 is 24/7, and so they're often backing up their neighbors. Staff Company 7 with the county fire department paramedics for the overnight shift that was identified, but then just stage the Chase vehicle at 7 or that side of the county during the day shift periods. And then lastly, Staff Company 7 with a county paramedic to complete a crew during the times they need, recognizing that we might not be able to get a second staff person on, and we might not be able to get a second staff person on for the short periods of time, because it's not a full 12-hour or 24-hour shift that they need, it's smaller periods of time. And as I noted, those are only just three options. There could be any number of other options. Sperryville put together some documents for you. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at them. One is a letter, but the other is their statistics most recently showing that they've been extremely effective in getting out to their calls. Mr. Polster's here, Chief Summers, President Woodward is here, and I'm sure any one of them would be willing to answer questions.
Just a situation where if we were to, park the chase buggy there, why would a chase buggy take off and wonder if an ambulance would meet them? Why would they be able to run off in the ambulance?
That would, that's our ultimate goal of operational status, is that we can complete a crew of one of the companies. One of the hiccups that we've had, and it hasn't really stopped us, is the policy side of things. 7 is the most open, I would say, so far on potentially adopting similar policies, if not more stringent policies than we have for our driving or substance abuse or various other things, to make sure that if our paramedic is hopping on an ambulance, that they're following the same rules as our staff would have to. That's the only hindrance, but it hasn't stopped us so far when we meet up on scene with any one of the companies to complete a crew with a company. It's just best practice.
But that really didn't answer my question. Maybe I didn't articulate it properly.
I think if the Chase vehicle were located at 7 and a call came in for a call that 7 needed to respond to, the person would step into the ambulance and go, wouldn't follow them in the Chase vehicle. But those are options for the board to consider. There may be benefits to taking the Chase vehicle in that, if it's a patient refusal, and then another call comes in on the other side of the county, then the person can hop in the Chase vehicle and go to the other side of the county rather than back to 7 and then on to the next call. I would leave that to the professionals to sort out how they think they can be best positioned to respond to calls.
Well, that scenario certainly sounds good, but if you have two people take off in a chase vehicle and nobody shows up with an ambulance, what have you got?
That's the risk we have any night of the week right now, where we have a paramedic, and just why we have sought seasoned paramedics to the greatest extent we can, so that if a paramedic is at a patient's side at 2 a.m. and might be there for 20 minutes, that person is comfortable in that situation until an ambulance shows up. But if we had 2 paramedics, as one of these examples would suggest, I wouldn't guess that they would both go in the Chase vehicle. They'd probably split the crew right at the time of the call, and someone would go with an ambulance and the Chase vehicle would stay available unless it was a critical call, and then the Chase vehicle might follow. But again, that's for Mr. Polster or the paramedics to determine what makes sense for the case at hand based on the call, whether it's a critical, heart issue or it's somebody skinned their knee.
I have a question for you, Mr. Polster.
Sorry. Out of these staff recommendations, would you be able to walk me through which one you think is the most efficient? Or at least gives us the best shot?
Yeah, so just to follow up, yes, sir, and if you don't mind, I hear your question, but expand on that. We can go back another 6 months, and I have all the data since I started here a year and a half ago. Miss Sperryville's had 100% response in those 6 months. And just put that into context, they're the only volunteer staff department that's had 100% response in the county, outside of Chester Gap, who has part-time career staff there. Their response time is 2 minutes and 58 seconds on average. So far for this year, 247 calls, they've gotten out the door within 2 minutes and 58 seconds on average. That's spectacular. So again, to support what they're doing, what the chief has in place, the staffing model they have, that's something that can be emulated across the county and really benefit all of our residents. So again, kudos to the chief for that. To your specific question and to your question, Mr. Frazier, is if the career medic, the ALS provider, was there with the buggy and the call came out, there's nobody there, we would not want to delay care to somebody in the community, we would take the buggy. Now, if there was a crew there, if there was a driver, we'd hop on the ambulance and we'd take the medic unit with them. So we'd have a provider there on the scene with a crew ready to transport. So these are things that we could work out with Chief. I think, again, one of the things that we've been able to do, to Mr. Curry's point, is really have cooperation as far as what works best for the operational template to ensure operational unity for the system, but ensure administrative separation because they are all independent companies. So as we move through this, back to your question, sir, reference which three would probably be best. I believe at this point, the best thing for the taxpayers would be to move that ALS vehicle to Company 7 for that short period of time. And if we need to staff overnight, it is going to be hard to find someone to staff for that 3 to 5 hour window. But if it is a longer period, we could staff their department with a medic overnight. And again, if they have a driver, we could again make a medic crew out the door within a matter of minutes and effectuate patient care for our residents. So that would be my suggestion to the board. And I've talked to Chief Summers. I don't know if he wants to speak as well, but
That's number 2.
that is number 2. Yes, sir.
I'm a bit confused though.
Yes, sir.
So if you had EMTs and paramedics, county personnel at Company 7, and a call came in, you would dispatch them immediately in the chase vehicle, not knowing if there's going to be anybody to show up to bring the ambulance.
That is correct. If there was not anybody there in the station, and we've been very effective, to Mr. Curry's point, we did have a situation at about 2 in the morning. One of our medics was on the scene for about 20 minutes. It was a severe allergic reaction in a young lady, and they were able to effectuate 4 interventions and really stop her allergic reaction until a medic crew showed up. And then we handed off the patient care to that medic crew. They transported to the hospital. We returned to service, ready for the next call. So we've had a really good working relationship with a lot of the medics, a lot of the providers, to where that's been a very effective model to this point. But one of the things I think that the chief has brought up is with their record of staffing and their record of responses, there's just some small windows and gaps that we can fill maybe on the short term, and then have a larger conversation about how we look at the strategic picture 2, 3, 5 years out. And one of the things I would agree with the chief and Mr. Woodward's in Ms. Berryville's letter is that we really look to an outside party. One of the things we did at the Public Safety Committee last month is look towards the Association of Fire Chiefs and the National Volunteer Fire Council on kind of what the best practices are for combination systems, and really looking to bring in somebody from the outside to talk to the volunteer system, to talk to us, to talk to the board, and really provide guidance on navigating through this process. Because there is a lot of contention between county and volunteer, and so how do we really ensure that we're all heard and kind of collaborate that process moving forward? So.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate, I think we have very good confidence that an ambulance is going to get to the scene. And we have several companies that are capable, and as we drill down that first due, second due, third due, an ambulance is going to get there and meet up with a paramedic. It's just a function of time. Now,
what I just heard about was a 20-minute delay waiting for an ambulance.
Well, and that can happen if the first due is not available and the second due might not be. And then, third due, you got to wake up at your house and drive to the station and get the ambulance and go. And it could be on the other side of the county. So
I know, but my question didn't apply to any of what you just said. My question was, you've got paramedics in a station that has an ambulance, yet they take off and leave it behind them.
we would not take an ambulance without a second person. But if a driver is there they'll go together.
Can
But
I-
they're not gonna wait for the
Can I
driver.
clarify? Thank you, Mr. Fraser, and good afternoon, everyone. The spots that we've located in our schedule where we have shortages, we still have an EMT/driver available during those periods. So there is no period in our schedule we have nobody on duty. We only have one person, and that therefore doesn't constitute a crew. That's why we've asked the county for help to make sure we get that second person. So there is an EMT/driver available to join the paramedic to respond to a call.
Yeah, in that basis, I guess we didn't make it clear.
It's
If you
not
have,
the question I asked was if we have two staff personnel with the chase buggy there, they take
Oh.
off and leave the ambulance behind with nobody there. So I'm hearing three different scenarios that doesn't address the same question I asked. So y'all are taking issue with the question I asked
I think
without actually
there's
addressing
confusion.
it.
I'm just confused by the question. I'm not taking issue with the question. So I think
It's very
option,
simple. You've got two people in a chase buggy. I'll reiterate it. Two people there, county staff with the chase buggy. A call comes in, an EMS call, let's say ALS call. Those two trained personnel take off in the chase buggy, leaving the ambulance behind with no one else there.
understand. So the third option would have been basically adding another paramedic. So there could be potentially two under that option at our station. So I see that possibility. We're actually recommending the second option, which is the already on duty ALS provider for the county is situated at or near our station. That one person to join our EMT/driver in our ambulance if we have a call. So we're not supporting the potential for having two providers on duty, partly because that's not very efficient for the county, because there's a good chance that there won't be any calls during that period. So we're trying to balance cost efficiency with making sure that our very large service area is covered.
Let me understand this. We have a chase buggy with two people in it,
Chase buggy has one person in it.
one person.
Yes, sir. And to answer your question, reference state code, and we found this out during the EMS
Review.
discussion we had with the state, was one provider is not allowed to take the ambulance unless they know they're gonna meet somebody on the scene. That's a violation of state code.
I understand.
So that provider, that EMS provider couldn't, off our buggy, could not jump in and take the ambulance by himself without knowing he's gonna meet
But
somebody.
that's
on
not the
scene.
scenario that I proposed.
Yeah, but there's not,
If we had two paramedics on site, then it would be a function of working with the chief to determine whether we can drive their truck. We're not on their,
Well,
we're not on their
all right,
insurance, and that's a totally different
Two
thing.
medics, you have a paramedic and the EMT driver, that could have been the two people that I was referring to. You have two people at the
Yeah.
station, do they take the ambulance or one of them take the chase buggy?
If one of them's a member of Sperryville Rescue Squad, absolutely they'll take the ambulance. If there were two county employees, neither of them are members of Sperryville Rescue, that's a bigger conversation of whether we're driving their piece of equipment and everything's insured properly.
and my question, Mr. Frazier, would be that you leave the operational, I mean, you staff us how you see fit, but let me work out with the chiefs what the operational template would be to ensure that we have kind of the same operating picture across the county. I absolutely appreciate your input, but I think it gets hard when we dictate kind of if it's this, then that, because they know their volunteers a lot better than I do. So I'd really like to work with the chiefs to make sure that whatever we do works for their departments, if at all possible, based on whatever solution you guys deem proper.
So if it's option two, and we're talking about potentially double staffing one night, that's gonna be absorbed into the county budget, and it's no extra cost for anything. Probably any of these would be absorbed into the county budget, because we budgeted like 110% of hourly coverage. But there are certain precedent-setting situations here where, you know, it's important to understand what you think is appropriate in this sort of situation, as it will be applied in other places.
Well, I do think it's important to know that, you know, when other companies have come to us and asked for help, we have tried to support them in the way that seems like the most effective and does the least harm, and also is cost-effective for the taxpayers. It sounds like staff is recommending the second recommendation, and it sounds like the chief believes you all can work with the second recommendation. So I think, what do you need from us? Just sort of an idea to move forward with the details?
Well, Sean can speak for himself. Actually, it's the last part of the letter and the last part of the conversation I'm actually more interested in, which is what's after August. So my vacation, which is causing part of this problem, may be canceled because I now have COVID with someone in my household. So it's September and beyond that I'm really worried about. We have several members who are leaving, so our attrition rate continues to be faster than our acquisition rate for new volunteers. And we look out over the future and we just see impossible for us to maintain. We've had several people say that they just can't keep going at the pace. We have one provider who's 82 years old and is asked to slow down a little bit. So we really need to sort of excite the discussion about coming up with a more permanent solution for the county. So I think we can work out whatever is needed for August, but September forward, the point is the status quo is just not working anymore.
Mr. Polster and I will be meeting with individual from the International Fire Chiefs Association next week, 2 weeks from now, just to begin a dialogue on whether that individual knows somebody who could help us with a facilitated discussion of all the volunteer companies to begin that conversation of what comes next, because there are differing interests across the county. There's a county government interest, there's citizen interest. Trying to get all those interests aligned is going to be challenging.
Well, I think there was a gentleman in Clark County who facilitated between their paid and volunteer staff that I think was very well regarded, but I think he's recently stepped away. I think when the chiefs went around and they did interviews with a lot of counties that had sort of the hybrid system, a lot of folks felt he did a really good job there, and he might be a good resource as you all start to look at the next steps. But I did see he had recently stepped away. That name sounds familiar, but it's someone in Clark County, and I'll try and find out who exactly it was. But I know we do continue to wrestle with where our volunteers will come from in fire and rescue, and the challenges that we never anticipated in the last few years for our first responders. And we owe you a real debt of gratitude for the services you have provided for the county always, but especially for the last few years. It's been very difficult, I know. And I hope your household does very well.
We're hopeful that we'll get positive news on the SAFER grant, which was recruitment and retention for the volunteers, and that whole process can layer in with conversations going forward at the association and the various companies.
Well, and there's always, part of our agreement, the fire services agreement, is that we will support recruitment and retention efforts as a board. And we should do that robustly because it helps everyone. And I know it's a silly maybe thing to recommend, but I do know in the past we've done inserts and tax bills and things like that to try to pique interest, and that's always a free way to just put something else in the envelope and reach out to folks.
That's already in progress.
Good.
Yeah, last comment, since I know this is not the forum for the long-term plan, but I really would like to excite your discussion about that long-term plan, because I feel like several years ago, the association came and triggered the condition in their agreement saying that we're gonna need to add paid people, and we've had, fortunately, this ALS 1400, the chase buggy, which has been a huge asset to the county. But that's not gonna solve the problem. I've been on several calls recently where they were over here in one part of the county, and there was a call in the other part of the county, and they were needed in both places. So it's a stopgap, from my perspective. So that conversation needs to happen quickly. There are lots of ways that you could do this, and they have various implications for coverage rates, cost to the county. So that's why we recommend in our letter this outside group to help us all look at those options and go through the modeling, look at drive times, look at budgets, look at staffing capacities. Underneath all this, let's remember there's a shortage of the personnel that we're talking about to do this. I think Mr. Curry mentioned before, just because we want to doesn't mean we get to. I'm informed by colleagues across the various areas that most of the companies around, paid or volunteer, are struggling, particularly with these advanced life support capacities. And in the last couple of years, they eliminated a middle category of medic. So now you go from an advanced provider, which requires 4 months of training, to paramedic, which requires 2 years. So this field is trying to professionalize itself at the same time as the need for their services has increased, and there's been a lot of attrition after COVID because it has been a couple of hard years. So there is a collision of things happening at this time. And then add to that the demographics of the county, right? We're getting older, myself included. And that means that we have a volunteer base that's shrinking, and we have a need that's more acute, more cardiac calls that do require that advanced care. So all these things are happening at this moment, and so I just think that we can't take another couple years to come up with a solution. This has got to be something that's done in months, really urgent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Do you need a motion?
I think if the board is okay with staff working out logistics, as long as there's no extra dollars involved, then I don't think I need any vote. I just need to know that we had this conversation. We would love, Mr. Polster and I would love the board's formal support regarding working with the association and the companies to drive forward the future conversation, because it's not universally held that we should do that. And you heard from one company today, and you may hear from others that don't want the county in their business. So, to be frank, and they are independent corporations, but we have a citizenry that we and you need to provide for. So, Mr. Polster and I think it's very important that we drive this overall review discussion, but we don't want to get over our skis too far and not be where the board wants us to be.
I think Harold and others brought forth, 2.5 years ago, the need for this. And I know the moderator, whoever leads this discussion, is extremely important to get buy-in from all the companies, all the chiefs and presidents. So that, to me, is the biggest issue you have right now, is finding someone that others will believe in what they have to say and respect what they have to say and be willing to listen and work together.
What sort of formal direction would you like from us in that capacity to move forward discussing this?
We could send a letter to the association requesting cooperation with your overall community-wide review of emergency medical service delivery, something like that.
It seems heavy-handed.
I mean, cooperation doesn't tell
I
them
would
what
just
they
add
need.
fire, because I'm not
Fire.
here to speak on their behalf, but I think this system pervades both fire and rescue. We're getting all old at the same rate, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything we do, we want to do it through the lens of, we don't want to influence the likelihood of a volunteer stepping forward. So
Right.
we move forward in ways that encourage volunteers to step forward, while also providing the parallel care to supplement the volunteers who are the primary providers. And we want to continue to be the primary providers. So it's a very careful process, which is one of the reasons why the association wanted to move forward with the chase vehicle, because an ambulance must get out to supplement the chase vehicle. The county ambulance could go out in the middle of the night and volunteers could say, oh, good, they got it. We don't need to worry about it. And so I think that was one of the reasons why the association came to that conclusion, which wasn't universally held, but it was held from a majority of those involved.
I mean, we do have a public safety committee. I really think this kind of falls under that purview. That's where everyone's supposed to sit down at the table and talk, right?
Certainly, it can be referred to the Public Safety Committee to review options and best way to move forward and bring that recommendation back to the board.
So, Mr. Chair and board members, we have had two departments come to Public Safety Committee and ask for staffing. One most recently was Flint Hill, if you recall. They came with a letter and several of their members and asked for staffing at their station, at which point in time we didn't have the capacity to fill. The other conversation we're having right now is with Castleton. Their ambulance response rate for the past 5 months has been 0. This last month it went up to 3.33%. So we are working through several departments, staffing, and as we've said with some of the agreements, is it's not getting easier to find volunteers. And this isn't just Rappahannock County. This is a nationwide trend that a lot of departments are really struggling with right now. So we can find a way, again, I reiterate, to find operational unity with administrative separation. I think that's really how we need to put this in a lens and then move forward. So, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it would be eminently irresponsible of us to be talking about this in a year and a half having done nothing. We can't do that. we have to continue this discussion somehow. And so if you're suggesting maybe moving this through the Public Safety Committee?
I think that's the best place to get recommendations on a way forward.
Do we need a motion to do that? Do we need a?
I don't necessarily think it needs to be formally referred. It could be, but.
When's the next meeting? I'm sorry.
You can always call a special meeting.
You
That's what
could.
I'm wondering if it's too far away.
And they're done that.
And in terms of moving forward with
September
number
6th?
2, do we need to?
Sounds correct.
I just want to frame it too, you know, we were here not too long ago at the end of 2020, and we did work quickly as I've ever seen the county work, to get the approval for the paid central staff personnel. Kind of get buy-in from the companies through the association. We called a special meeting of the Public Safety Committee, and then we brought it to the board. And I think that all happened in December, and then the board met and approved it in January, which was incredibly fast decision-making from all of those organizations. So I think if there is a will to do something different, that's the path we sort of need to follow. It's from the ground up, not from the top down.
It's definitely got to be a strategic whole picture. Where do we go moving forward? Discussion, and everybody's got to be at the table.
Yeah, it would seem that, if we've got 3 sets asking for help, it would benefit to have a comprehensive overlook of what's going on. I mean, it just it's counterintuitive not to do that. And so I think you're right in the sense that through the Public Safety Committee, that's where that discussion can start and move forward. Good.
Okay. Chair is right there.
You're still looking up the date?
Mr. Summers, do you all agree that with that direction, Public Safety Committee is a good route to take?
It sounds like the appropriate route to me.
Okay.
But I think that the priority needs to be kicked up a lot.
Okay. Heard.
It's challenging because some companies will say everything's great, and other companies will say, let's do something, and so that has to be managed through the process.
Yeah. We have very good numbers now, but this is very solid information that we didn't have before as well.
Why that's important to have an independent outside expertise to be brought to bear on this.
Yep.
They can provide a framework, and then we can try to modify it to fit Rappahannock County's unique situation. Because we try to build it from the ground up, I think it's going to be a long haul.
One thing I would like to say is thank you very much for your scheduling, because without your scheduling, it would have just been another week where you didn't have people in the building and we didn't know about it to do anything about it. So thank you for the professionalism and the scheduling and bringing it to us so that we know that this discussion had to happen, and working with Mr. Polster and ALS 1400. We know the citizens are still going to be taken care of, but the broader picture is really what is of concern, I think. All right?
I'm good.
Good. I'm going to recommend a 5-minute break. Recess, please.
I guess the combination of Zoom calls and Zoom meeting connection with Wiley Wilson, Randy Vaughn, and his assistants, and they were showing us 3D models. So it looks like we're going to be able to have another meeting on the, I think it's the 18th, that we're going to be looking at more in depth. So we should be able to bring the board back something very soon, hopefully for the September meeting, to actually take a look at to see if we're working in the right direction and working with the board's understanding, and just keep progressing in that area. We're hopefully on the 18th also going to have somebody that can start discussions with as far as a way to move forward with the work that needs to be done on this building and the other historical buildings. Yes, we're wanting to do it more like not so much a design build, but like pre-qualifying certain contractors and then a way to move forward with that as well. So that's kind of where it is. We're looking at the 18th.
Wonderful.
Would those same folks be doing the jail, or is that?
That would be the first thing on the agenda is the jail, yes. But it's a historical building, the bulk of it is, or some of it is. Depends on how would you want to call it historical. Yeah, it's I have to look up the guy's name, but he's very familiar with work of that nature, and also I think the way of getting it done.
Is a person that Mr. Waters identified as a good asset and has engaged him, and he's shown willingness to come kind of partner with us to sort it out.
Very cool. But yeah, going with what the board directed the building committee to, the old jail would be the first building that we tackle. But that would basically be a model for the rest of the buildings, I believe.
Thank you. Our staff stay.
We did not meet. There was no physical quorum present, so we did not meet.
Public Safety Committee did not meet. Rules Committee.
We did not meet this month.
Planning Commission, do you have any update on that?
Well, Planning Commission will be, let's see, I did not go to the meeting. There was a meeting on the 20th, at which time I believe they reviewed 2 tourist homes. I'm not sure if that was the BZA meeting or the Planning Commission. I have to review.
I was at the BZA meeting. Does that help you?
Yeah, that was 2 tourist homes there, and once I said that, it seemed like it was probably wrong. They continue to move forward, obviously. Still looking for a time to reschedule the second half of the sign ordinance in a work session. That's still on their plate. Of course, the Board of Supervisors, you'll have your meeting with Berkeley Group on Wednesday of this week at 6 p.m. in this room. Berkeley Group folks will be here to walk you through the report that they previously shared with the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. And Fire Levy Board.
We will meet on August 31st with the company reps. Yep, so we just, Chairman Stenner just reached out and organized that, so look forward to that.
Chiefs have already met once, and they reviewed bills, and they're cleaning up a little bit, and they'll get it to me. And according to the Fire Levy Board bylaws, those bills are to be out to the members of the Fire Levy Board 2 weeks in advance of the meeting, so you have plenty of time to review them.
That process seems to have gotten smoother.
Hopefully.
Yep.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
that. And your spreadsheet.
Treasurer's report. Numbers are looking good.
Things look good.
Yeah, just point out to the public, the meals and lodging tax revenue that I shared with the board, highest quarter to date. Don't know what that means relative to gas prices and people's interest in.
Well, there's a new percentage being imposed now, right?
There's a little bit higher on the lodging side, yep, and so we should have seen that in the last bar, but still, $146,000 for the quarter is a lot. We'll certainly take it.
Like twice the amount, 5 years previous.
Yeah. Oh, well, the rates are higher, and
That's true.
And,
Yeah, that's true.
and we have to remember that with inflation and with that base going up, the fixed percentage goes up. You can see the cash position, and it's pretty high, but this 8.7 million includes all of the ARPA funds. You haven't spent any pennies out of those ARPA funds. You've allocated them. They just haven't been dispersed yet. So don't, keep that in mind when you look at that. And there's, some of that CARES money that was.
Do you have a figure for if they were dispersed, you would have taken out of that little blip?
Oh,
What that blip would be?
It's 1.4 million.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
so 8.7.
It'd be down.
But last year included some of that too, right?
Yep.
But obviously that's all good. Other than that, data is these data points are for the very beginning of fiscal year 23. Also, I'll just note that the treasurer's annual report is required by the Code of Virginia for the various delinquencies and whatnot that she's required to report by the Code of Virginia is attached. I don't really understand half of the data points of why they're relevant to us, but the code says she has to report it, so she does.
And thank you to Ms. Mick for preparing that report for us.
All these reports.
Great.
A building permit report, another huge month. They're very busy, another $5.5 million of estimated construction costs. I included information, a little pamphlet I think I placed at your spots and scanned from VDAX, the spotted lanternfly information, really scary stuff. We're not in the quarantine area, but it's just over the mountain. And apparently these spotted lanternflies really like the tree of heaven, which are everywhere, but they also like the vineyards. So that's very concerning to the state and I'm sure all vineyard owners. And I imagine other vegetation as well. But if you read the information, it's interesting that basically if you see them, it says kill them, squash them, step on them, do whatever you can to do, just kill them. So you have the state's permission to kill them. Any possible way.
They're reaching out to the vineyards, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. And that's a lot of, Mr. Love with Cooperative Extension came to me at least a year ago and asked if he could put some banners up at Flatwood. So sure, so if you go through there, you'll see it's just awareness.
I did notice that just the other day.
Yeah, it's probably been there a year.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
But very scary.
So are these, do we have a lot of these that maybe we could put them in the post office?
We have a few. This is really catered towards the quarantine areas. So I don't know if it's totally relevant to us. And apparently in the quarantine area, there's permitting and all sorts of stuff that we have to look forward to. It's really just a notice for us to get ready and be prepared and be aware. Yeah.
All right, matters presented by the board.
I did just want to mention that I attended that BZA meeting last week, and I would encourage the other board members to watch it if you've not had an opportunity to watch it. That property that was permitted to have the B&B, I developed what I thought were some very reasonable additional requests for the permit, and through debate, one was included, but then what concerned me the most was some of the recommendations for conditions that were referred by the Planning Commission were diluted by the BZA to not be as strict as the Planning Commission recommended. And the applicant was perfectly willing to abide by the Planning Commission recommendations. Members of the BZA just took issue with the recommendations. And my concern stems from a couple of things. One was that when someone leaves the Planning Commission and there's set conditions for their permit and the owner of the property seems to be agreeable to them, one might be under the impression that everything's said and done and it will all work out okay, because the neighbors were not in attendance. And then I also think it marked a discontinuation of the tradition that I understood, that the representative of the BZA to the Planning Commission support the Planning Commission's recommendations on the BZA. And that did not happen. And not that it's either here or there, but I do think we have a good practice on this board when someone asks to be identified in the course of a meeting. We try to hear people as much as we can, which I think is a good hallmark of of a robust public meeting. And when I asked to be heard from, when I observed how the conditions were being watered down, I was denied the opportunity to be heard, even though the applicant was afforded several opportunities to be heard. So if you haven't watched it, I know we all go to enough meetings and to watch an additional meeting.
That's a code violation. They have to give equal time to everybody.
Well, I would urge you to watch it and please let me know what you think. It is a very long and narrow property, and some things happened on it that, through no fault of the current owner, create some very challenging conditions for permitting. So please watch it and let me know what you think. And I think we need to have a clearer line of communication between the three bodies. I'm not sure how that happens, but I think it would benefit everyone.
That dog training thing in Amosville, they did the exact same thing.
Well, one of the things on the Berkeley Group discussion point would be and the recommendation of the board wants to handle is whether to change the BZA having those legislative actions on their plate or not. So the board can reserve them all to yourself, or you can grant some to the BZA, and that's one way to handle that situation.
Well, and I did watch the dog training facility public hearing also, and until that time I hadn't really had concerns about the BZA, but that did raise a lot of concerns for me, and so I attended this meeting last week, and I have never been in favor of interfering with the function of the BZA, but I do think we need to maybe have clearer lines of communications for better service to our applicants and our citizens.
I agree. I think that through this process, as we go through it, and especially going over the table of SEs and SUs, I firmly believe that all legislative action should be tied to us, an elected official. That's just what I think. I think that the BZA should be doing variances and appeals only. And so I would support looking at that. I know it would create a lot more work for us.
A year ago, I would have disagreed with you.
Me too. It's a double-edged sword, and I don't mean to interrupt you. I liked the idea of the buck stopping here. The other side of the coin is it makes everything political, which is very dangerous.
If I can, I wasn't on the board at that time, but I remember the discussions of the 1984, which I think I still have the draft copy that became the 1986 because it took a while to get it through. But that was part of the argument that, something, well, like a tourist home is not really a countywide issue, but special exceptions was where you would send that to the board. And the BZA were supposed to, dive down and take into consideration the neighborhood that the proposed use was going into. But right now, it's become political because the appointment process became political. Planning Commission and BZA members, and I said this a month ago, should not be running for the position. And yet, that's what certain people turned it into in this county. Letters to the editor, support so-and-so for appointment to the BZA. You don't find that in any other county around here. I've never seen it. And if I talk to anybody around us, they just look at me like, what are you talking about? People don't run for the BZA down there in the newspaper in Fauquier County, but yet they did it here. Same thing with the Planning Commission. I get an email from somebody a while back that so-and-so was running for the Planning Commission. Those positions are not supposed to be political. And yet, right now, they are in Rappahannock.
Well, and that's why I sort of think that it would benefit everyone to have it tied to an elected official. But I get it. It would make a lot more work for us.
It would make a lot more work, and it would necessarily make almost everything political.
At any rate, I would just, if you haven't watched that hearing and the dog facility hearing, they were both real eye-openers for me.
Thank you for that.
If you
Mr.
want
Frick?
to-
Oh, go ahead.
If you want to, Because Gary and I plan to use this month to, work on that BZA stuff, and, maybe just expand that and grant authority to include in the ordinance a prohibition on campaigning for such positions.
You can do that, huh?
Both the planning commission and the BZA, of course, the BZA, that's the traditional appointment, and they're not supposed to be looking at all that stuff, but at least we can put it in there.
Well, I've seen the board do it more than once over the last 30 years where they would make a recommendation for an appointment to the BZA as a board vote. And I used to sit out there and I'd say, and I still have the same position, the reason the General Assembly in their infinite wisdom created a BZA that's appointed by the circuit court is so that, this board, our predecessors and successors, they created, if you will, and approved a zoning ordinance. So then we hire a zoning administrator by statute to administrate it. So then if there's an issue with it, it goes to a BZA where it's appealed to a different group of people that should have really no allegiance to the Board of Supervisors. And yet, again, this county BZA was turned into a political process where we have members of the Board of Supervisors writing letters in support of people being appointed, whether it's an official act of the board or not. And it's just not healthy. And yet the judges, now that we don't have one from around here, they're in a predicament because they don't know much about this county, so they kind of appreciate getting some sort of correspondence, I guess. And it puts them in a tough position. They get 2 or 3 letters supporting somebody for the BZA when, if I was a judge, with the feelings that I have, I would reject that person out of hand because they're now campaigning for the job. But it's not happening.
I don't understand that process anyway, to have somebody that doesn't even understand our county deciding who should be sitting on our BZA just seems counterintuitive.
Well, that's why I think it should be variances and appeals only, because they'd be matter of just totally black and white, yes or no. It wouldn't be, hey, should we allow this basically commercial use where it's not particularly allowed? And I feel like it would suck out the political aspect of it.
I don't know, with this particular BZA, they question, they try to take that route before there's even an appeal. They start questioning the decision of the zoning administrator when an application is before them for, a use permit.
Well, the code does allow us to remove that responsibility from the BZA, that the whole SUP thing.
Reserve it to ourselves.
And reserve it to this board. And that's our goal for August, is to get that done. Because if you take the discretion and all they're doing is hearing appeals, then I do believe that will have a tremendous positive impact on the political influence and that kind of thing. When all their function is just to hear an appeal from the decision of the zoning administrator. Then from there it goes on the writ up to the circuit court. No more SUPs means that the political aspect of it's reserved to this board. And then to craft it in such a way that only stuff that really needs the attention of this board is by removing, does a guy need a public hearing and a special exception for building a swimming pool, well, that's more or less basically an admin decision. That's just an example. And other stuff that Gary and I looked at and will continue to look at, so that when something hits this board, it's something actually of merit, and something that has a broader implication. Because that's rightfully political. You guys legislate the zoning administrator, and when someone's asking for an exception, that's a legislative act. But certain things are not. You can't micromanage it to a level that, next thing you know, the neighbor's got a grudge, you've got a public hearing, next thing you spend an hour on a swimming pool. That's just not good use of the board's time. So that's what hopefully we'll be able to present to you at the end of the month, and take the BZA out of the politics business.
And I guess that's a further discussion for Wednesday, but I just particularly wanted to highlight that meeting. And then I did think that there was I think we all get this newsletter the county newsletter. And there was a good article on tourism economy presents challenges to counties. And of course, it's for larger and different counties than Rappahannock County. But I thought it was a pretty good article. Do you not get that? You don't get that?
NACO.
Yeah, National Association of Counties. This is the same one that our social services was written up in
Yeah.
not too long ago.
Should be able to- If you don't get paper, you should get electronic. I can look
So,
into it.
but anyway, good article on that. Not a lot of answers, but, you know, different points of view from across the country and different size counties of the struggle of tourism, related economies, and the demands that they place on the county and how to, successfully navigate, or at least try to successfully navigate the challenges that creates.
Mr. Frazier, anything for matters presented by the board?
I don't think at this time, no, thank you.
Mr. Carney?
No, I think I'm good.
The only thing I have, I did go to the the Northern Piedmont Community Foundation invited us to the Fauquier County Education Farm. It was a site visit on the 25th, and they're off Meats Road in Warrenton. And it's a very nice farm. Don't remember the acreage, but there's a gentleman named Jim that runs the whole farm, and he really does it from educate the children. So they take kids of all ages that can come and pick or do whatever. But it's also a well-run farm as far as rotation and where they plant and how they plant and all that good stuff. And then all of the vegetables and fruit, and they do flowers as well, is divvied up for the surrounding food pantries and banks and stuff like that. So it looked to me like something, if the need is there, that Rappahannock County could easily do as well. I'm sure there's a farm that would be willing to set some land aside and do a similar program. If we're interested, I would get Jim to come out and present to us at one of our board meetings. A really nice farm.
Getting Ken or Love involved in that would be.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. I think that was all I had. Okay. Close meeting?
Yeah.
Trying to make a motion.
Want to read that?
I move that the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors conduct a closed meeting in accordance with 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of 1, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. Subject matter of the closed meeting will be briefing on the county administrator's selection to fill the assistant county administrator's position. Number 2, county administrator's annual performance review pursuant to section 15 of his employment agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Oh, this is roll call.
Roll call, sorry.
It doesn't have to be, but I have it listed out there.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Carney?
Aye.
Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
And I also.